Today, I want to read a couple scriptures that go with our series on priorities. And before I do, I was reading an article this morning, and it was talking about the growth of the, I don't know, I guess it's new to me. Maybe you knew about this, the growth of the atheist church. So they have these groups of people. What sounds to me like, I don't want to be too judgmental, but I guess I got to say something about it. You throw God out in some form or another for whatever reason you justify, and what they're realizing is that something's still missing. Isn't this? So we got to have church, but we got to just make sure we don't mention God. And now in our society, in every single week, I interact with a family that is dealing with, the students up here today, we're praying for them, a young person that's depressed, lonely, confused, on drugs, and we can't seem to put the two of these together. Now, what I'm trying to say is that God has a better way, God has a better plan for your life, but if you refuse to engage in it, if you refuse to acknowledge it, you're just going to go the way of your own devices. And when people get to this spot, they realize that it's empty, that it's not fulfilling, so then they have to come back and try to recreate something, because at the end of the day, we know that God put us here. And you can deny it, but deep down inside, you know. And God's got something better for you. And I say this, God has something better for this young generation that is dealing with all of this, the repercussions of it. I am old school enough. I'm old school enough to think that we need to be forceful enough. I don't know how to say that exactly, but I'll say it, forceful enough in raising our kids to follow God. You can't force them, you can't make them, but you can do everything in your power to put them on the right path. And it gives them such a better foundation for their life. So in the scriptures, the children of Israel, they're stifled, they're suffering in Egypt. And all along, God's looking down on them, and he comes to Moses, and he says to Moses, I have seen their suffering. I see their misery. And I think today, Exodus 3, same thing. God looks and he sees the suffering. He sees the misery that people are suffering under. He says, I've heard their crying. And I think today, God hears the crying of this young generation. And they're being manipulated. And God says, I'm concerned about it. But then he says this, I have come down to rescue them. And I think the same thing is today. God has a plan to take them to a promised land. I'm going to bring them up into a spacious land, a land that's flowing with milk and honey. God has better for this young generation. God has better. And what we have to do is we have to get ourselves, the journey of the children of Israel leaving Egypt is very much like our journey through life. And what happens when they leave, God does all these miracles for them, and they just get out of Egypt, and they end up at a mountain. And it says this, Exodus 19, then Moses led the people out of the camp to meet God. Where are we going? We're going to meet God. We're going to meet your Maker. I'm going to make an introduction. See, if you get this, they've only been out 3 months. The other day, Charlie was asking me, like, how you count the age of when you're less than 1. We had this whole complex conversation about being 0. And I said, well, what they do is they count by months. They said he's 1 month, he's 2 months, she's 3 months old. Sometimes even start with weeks. He's 3 weeks old, right? And she couldn't quite grasp it. She says, no, you're 0. And I said, well, you can use that, but I was just trying to explain it to her. She was trying to understand how many Christmases she's had. She's really stoked about Christmas. I was trying to tell her it's a long way away. And she said, Dad, how many Christmases have I had? She was born right before, so she said, I had one when I was 0. And I said, yeah, technically you did. You're 0. This is what I do with my life. This is what I do. They're 3 months old. This is significant. This is saying, this is how you get started. You got to get right to the mountain. The mountain is heavily symbolic of putting God at the top place of your life. Putting God at the top. Notice this. Sinai was covered with smoke because the Lord descended on it in fire. And it says the smoke billowed up like a furnace. And the whole mountain shook violently. God's trying to get your what? Has God ever tried to get your attention? Huh? Has God ever shook you up? It's just like this is where we got to start. We just got to start here. We got to start with God. Now this seems like, Chris, I'm here. I came to church. Why are you yelling at us? But do you see what's going on in our generation? It's just God's not at the mountaintop anymore. There's no violent shaking and reverence. You would notice if you go into the New Testament, this is good. Jesus also, so Moses brings the law down. He brings the law, and we already talked about him during the series. God first, and have no other gods before me. Don't make an image. Don't speak the Lord's name in vain. You have the commandment to put God's first, and then you have all these other commandments to support the first one. It's all to reinforce the Sabbath. It's all there. And then, from the mountaintop, the structure comes. And what's happened, not only is God being thrown out, the structure's being thrown out, the rule book's being thrown out, and we are suffering the consequences. God is at the top, whether you recognize him or not. And what God does in his grace is he shakes the mountain for you. It's God's mercy that he wakes you up, that he shakes you, that he gets your attention. Now, if you take God out of the equation altogether, like, I don't know what parents tell their kids who don't believe in God. I don't know what they tell them. When the whole thing starts shaking, what do they tell them? And they sang the song about hope. If you don't have God, Scripture says, if you without God and without hope, if you take God out of the equation, what do you tell them? When everything starts shaking, what do you tell them? Well, life sucks, and then you're going to die pretty soon. I mean, what can you tell them? Interestingly, now listen to this. Interestingly, this is what I said in this article about these churches for atheists. They said they realized that people needed hope. No kidding. They openly admit there is no purpose, there is no value, and there is no meaning in life. And they wonder, why don't people have any hope? Why don't they get out of bed? Why don't they have passion? Why don't they have goals? Why don't they have a focus on the future? Because life's hopeless. Now, God's at the top. And this is important. By the way, when you get to the New Testament, if you go to Matthew's gospel, Matthew specifically, we learn, if you grew up in church, a Sunday school or something, the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5:1. When Jesus saw the crowd, he went up on a mountainside and he sat down. His disciples came to him and he begins his teaching. Just like Moses taught coming down from the mountain, Jesus speaks from the, he's giving his, and by the way, he gives his interpretation of the law. And it's the same segment where we got the verse, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. From the mountain. From the mountain. On top. It's very simple. God first. Everybody say with me. 1, 2, 3. God first. God first. You just put God first. Now, it can be complicated in the execution, but at least we need to start with the recognition. God first. We came out of slavery. God just took us. He just did this unbelievable miracle. We were walking through. There was walls of water on either side. We got to stop. And Moses says, I would like to introduce you to the guy that just did that for you. No. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Right there. God first. God at the top. The great structure to our life is God first. Do all of us execute this perfectly? No, but let me at least share with you that if you start to put this structure in your life where you acknowledge God first, Jesus said all these other things, they'll take care of themselves. So we have all of this worry and this stress, and we just refuse to say, let's put God first. Now, it gets even better. After they have this meeting with God, he's on the top of the mountain. They get the laws. They get the instructions. They build a camp. And they have to make their way to the promised land. The promised land is the life that God has for you. That is better than the land that was back there. That was better than the life that was back there. And they give them a little instructions. Now, a lot of you don't know this verse because if you ever try to read the Bible through, it's in Numbers, and you quit in Leviticus. So I'll read it for you. The Israelites are to camp around the tent of meeting, some distance from it. Each of them under their standard, that's like their family flag, if you will, and holding the banners of their family. So this is something where you're reading it like, just give me something good. Give me something I can put on the fridge. All right, this one you can put on your fridge now. Everything is around the tent of meeting. What's the tent of meeting? That's where God is. That's where the presence of God is. So they built this tabernacle out in the wilderness, and the presence of God was in the tabernacle, and everything surrounded it. God at the top and God at the what? Center. Do you want a good life? I didn't say perfect. I didn't say without problems, without challenges. But do you want a good life? God at the top and God at the what? Center. They're out in the wilderness. And it's all structured. These 4 families would go here. These 4 families on this side. These 4 families to the north. These to the south. Right? They all were separated like this. And God was at the... Do you think that after a while it struck them that was important? God was at the center. Where's God? At the center. I wonder, you're driving your kid off to college or something like that. You got the family caravan. Where's God? Now, certainly, we don't carry God around in a box as they did back then. But it still begs the question, where's God? Have we moved on? Practically, have we just moved on from God? I think in some ways we have. Is there like a family prayer? I really think the big problem is that secularism has moved from outside the church to inside the church. And God's somewhere in tow in case you need him, usually in the trunk. Anybody with me? Who here has got like something in the back of your trunk and then there's like a thing underneath there, and underneath there's a tire that you never knew was there. The other day I lift up this thing and I'm like, oh wow, there's a whole little compartment here I didn't even know about. That's where we put God. Right in there, just in case of an emergency. And what's going on in our society is we've reduced God for emergencies only. I mean, we pretty much can handle it ourselves. These guys, the whole community, the whole thing surrounded God. God was at the very center of all of it. You think about today. You go to traveling through a town in Europe. What's at the center of town? What's at the highest point? A bunch of fools. They've all grown up so much since then. Okay. You see, this is the theme over and over again in the scripture is God just keeps saying, have it your way. Have it your way. But they would go through the wilderness, and then it says this. They would set out and they would leave in the same order. So they were always keeping this structure. They would always have this same order as they moved. So God was always, they carefully orchestrated all of these people. How many know it's hard to get 4 people through Walmart? Is it true? I mean, can you imagine taking all of these people and everybody's got their own mind. You're like, no, you're here. No, you're here because God's going to be what? Here. God's going to be here. It's going to take some work. It will take work for you to structure God at the center of your life. It will. You have to restructure some things. A little to the left. But you always know. God's in the middle. God's at the top. God's in the center. We like to say at Orchard Grove, God with us. God with us, right in the midst of us. God for us, and God in us by the Holy Spirit. And then, there's a lot of peace when you have order in your life. And I want you to just think about this because I think the thing that's really missing for a lot of people is peace. They don't have peace. And when you take God away and you have this chaos, everybody just run through the desert. Just run. And then you're trying to get everybody to stop. Stop. The other day, took Charlie and her cousins out tubing. And, you got to communicate. So, like, the boat's a little bit loud, they're a little bit back, the waves and everything like that. And there's all kinds of signals. And Charlie likes to tell me what all the signals are. Dad, this is faster, this is slow, this is just right. We need to go over the waves some more. So as soon as we get in there, she starts with the instructions. Right? And just instruction. But then after a while, you just get these, like, screeches. And so I turned to ask Mom, like, are these good screeches or are these bad screeches? I'm trying to drive. Do you know what I'm saying? The communication gets broken down. Think about think about it. You're trying to communicate. You have all these signals. You're trying to take all these people through the wilderness. How do you know? How do you keep it together? There comes peace with order. There was a cloud. There was a cloud. And when the cloud lifted, they would all move. And when the cloud stopped, they would all, what? Stop. The cloud moves, you go with the cloud. The cloud stops, you stop. Sometimes it would stop for the night, and then we get up and go the night. But sometimes it would stop for a while. You don't know why. How many know it's sometimes hard to figure out what God's doing in your life? He's moving, he stopped. Anybody here ever get ahead of God? Like you kept going? You ever been at Cedar Point, you're walking along with your family and friends, and then you turn back and you're all alone? What happened? Got ahead? I got too far ahead. Or you weren't paying attention and everybody left and you're behind. This was the key. This was the key to going through this. You got to follow. You got to keep your eyes on that cloud. And when the cloud moves, you pack up your stuff and you move. What's the most important thing for direction in your life? Where is God leading me? That's the only thing that matters. You know, it doesn't matter what this survey says or this research says. What matters is the cloud moving or stopping? Is it going left or is it going right? Don't get ahead of God. Think about the times you got ahead of God. Remember? You had all your big ideas. Remember? You didn't consult. You just sort of told God what the plan was, and which, by the way, is what a lot of our prayers are. They're, God, if you could just get on board with what we got going on here. Is this true? This is what I got going on. I just kind of need you to get on board. And what's the real thing is, God has the plan, and what we need to do is figure out, did he move forward? Yep. Don't get ahead. How do you know? Like in a very practical way, how do I actually know if I'm getting ahead of God? You know, there's a great story where young Samuel is with Eli the priest, and he would hear this voice at night. Samuel. So he'd go in, and he would talk to Eli, and he said, yes. And Eli's like, I didn't call you. Go back to bed. Samuel goes back to bed. Samuel hears the voice again. Samuel. He gets up, he runs back into Eli. Yes. What is it? Finally, Eli realizes what's going on, and he says, Samuel, go back to bed. The next time you hear that voice, I want you to say this. Yes. Yes, Lord. Speak, Lord. Your servant is listening. Maybe the greatest thing you can ever learn to do is a sensitivity to God speaking to you. Now, could it be with a mountain shaking? I guess it could. Let's try to not get it to that level. But I do believe that God speaks to each and every one of us. We just have to pay attention to that still, small voice. Ready? Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. What a good thing to say at night when you go to bed. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. I'm yours. What I want to do is what you want me to do. Don't get ahead of God. Don't start all your own things that God's not with. It's so much work. Have you ever noticed this? It's so much work when you've created your own thing and you're trying to keep it going. Do you know what I mean by this? You ever get your own thing? You realize, like, there's no wind in my sail. There's no God in this. This is just me, brute force, just trying to overcome it. And then have you ever done something and it's just like God just breathes into it? You are in step. The Bible says in step with the Spirit. Sometimes God's already moved on, and there you sit. This happens to a lot of people. You know, something good happened in the past, they had a good thing, and they get stuck right there. And God's moved forward, God's moved on, the clouds, but there they are, stuck in the past. You know, one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself is to learn to keep your eyes on that cloud, to learn to hear the voice of God speaking to you. Because if you do, the times will come when God will speak to you and you will know, like, it's time to go. Other people will go, what's going on? You're like, it's time to go. God's speaking. God's calling. Then all of a sudden, boom, it stops. Just stay right here. God at the top, and God where? At the center. And then when God moves, you move. And when God stops, you stop. Once in a while, they'll ask me stories about how certain things came to be, like at Orchard Grove. I was explaining this story to somebody, and I realized maybe there's a lot of people that don't know. So we came to this building, and it was as wide as like that post to that wall and to that post back there. So I'd be talking to you guys. That was it. Forget you guys. Forget you guys. Not in the picture yet. Not in the situation. There were walls, right? And we grew. We knocked down this wall. We knocked down that wall. We knocked down another one. Then we knocked down this big wall right here. And we were poor. It was a little tiny group, and but they charged us like $9,000 a month. And, you know, we were paying $4,000 a month before, and it was tough. And then it got, every square foot we took over, they charged more rent. Next thing you know, it was $20,000 a month. We took over the building. So I talked to the owner, and he says, I tell you what, Christian guy, he goes, I want to sell you the building. Listen to this. I want to sell you the building. I want to give you the building next door that has a tenant in it for free. The tenant next door paid $10,000 a month in rent. Are you with me? Who flunked math? You can even do this one. Are you with me? So God opens this door where now instead of paying $20,000 a month in rent, we pay $19,000 a month in a mortgage, and they pay us $10,000. Is anybody getting better at math? You know, people say, "Oh, how do you you can't orchestrate that. You fall into that." Are you with me? You fall into it. It's like, what? When you're about, I mean, it's so stressful getting up here saying church is free and then writing checks for $20,000 a month rent. You know what I'm talking about? You talk about stress. You get the stress, it's the end, and then God just goes, here you go. You're on the right path. You ever get this little sign from God like, you're okay. I'll take care of you. Here you go. Don't get ahead of God, right? Don't get behind. Just stay listening. Next thing you know, we're able to knock down this wall, make this, and God just provides at just the right time. So they go through the wilderness. We'll close here. They go through the wilderness, And God's providing for them in a different kind of way. They start to complain, as we're known to do. We got to eat all we wanted back in Egypt. It's funny how your memory can be a little screwed up. Like thinking about the good old days, you're like, man, back in the good old days, and then, maybe they weren't so good. And God said, I'm going to provide every single day. I was going to bring manna from heaven. Every day is going to be just enough. It's not the way they were used to it, but every single day God would give them just enough. And when you're following God's plan, when you're following God's cloud, and you're in God's presence, there's enough. There's just enough. And it takes away the worry, and it takes away the stress. And that's why in the same mountain teaching, Jesus says, give us this day our daily, what? There's enough right there. God will always give you just enough. And so as we wrap this today, this is the thing I want to ask for everybody. Let's put God at the top. Let's knock off a couple other things that are up there. Whatever's at the top, that's who calls the shots. They have a joke about who wears the pants in the family. Well, what you need to say is, God calls the shots in our family. And all we do is the best we can to discern. He's at the top. God only wants what's good for us. God only wants what's good for our family. God only wants to take us to the promised land. God at the top. God at the center. We will reorganize, reorient everything here, as much work as it takes, to make sure God's at the center. God at the center. And when God moves, then we move. And when God says stop, then we what? It's that simple. If you put those things together in your life, God will take you to the promised land. God will take you to the better life. And it's not just about arriving at a certain place. It's you will experience God's grace and God's presence every single day. I don't know how else to say it, especially to this young generation. I wanted to share it today because we were acknowledging these seniors, like leaving one stage of life and moving to another. But there's this crisis that's going on with the young generation. And we have to get this message to them. God. It's not confusing. If everyone's confused, what do I do? Just God first. What would I do? I'd get my rear end to church, or, if you don't like this, then go to a different one. It doesn't matter to me. I'd get my rear end to church, and I'd come down here, and I'd put my knee down. Right there. I'd put it down. That's what I did as a kid. All right, if you don't want to come, then do it in a chair. I'd put my knee on the ground because I'd say, God's above me. I'm not, God's above. God makes the decisions in my life. I'm trying to figure out what he wants me to do. But that brings a lot of clarity. It's not my life. Your kingdom come, your what? Every day, your will, not mine. You want a frustrating life? Just start exercising your will all the time. Start thinking about we got to stop telling these kids, what do you want to do with your life? Oh, Pastor Chris, that's blasphemy in America. I don't care. I really don't care. Why do we keep saying, what do you want to do with your life? Why don't we start saying this? What do you think God put you here to do? Well, that's worth thinking about, I guess. Unless you brought yourself here. Just quick survey. Anybody bring yourself here? God brought you here. I mean, you can thank your mom and your dad, and you can thank a few other people along the way, but when you get to the thanking, you better put God in that list. What does God want me to do with my life? That's different. One of the great stresses that you hear all the time is They don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. I can tell you two things to do. First, stop thinking about it as your life and start thinking about it as God's gift. That will change everything. I mean, it could have been overdone in my era in Bible school and all that, but it was all about God's will. What's God's will? You're trying to discern, what does God want from me? And the second thing is you'd say, what's in front of me right now? In other words, what can I do that's in front of me right now that I don't have to delay or, because everybody is, what's going on is people are saying, well, someday, when I find this or I find, then I'm going to get, no. You do what God put in front of you. Right. God determined the exact time and places that we should live. So there you go. Do what's in front of you. And do what's in front of you to the very best of your ability until God moves you to the next thing. You don't have to wait around anymore. You just serve God to the best of your ability. I don't like my boss. You're not serving him. You're serving. Are you with me? I don't want to go. I don't want to do that. I want to wait till I get the perfect boss. Want to have a testimony Sunday? It's not going to happen. I want to wait till I can work 8 days a week at home. Yeah, we all do. In our pajamas. Then the crisis that we're having, I'm telling you, it's going to dissipate because you're going to have the right things in the right place, finally. My aunt was telling me yesterday, we had my family reunion, kind of around my grandma's birthday. She said something to me that I thought we were talking about for a long time because we had the family picture, my grandma and grandpa and my aunts and uncles and so we just put it out as a part of the thing. We were all, looking at it and they're all dressed up because back in the day you always dressed up. Remember this? And I mean, you would dress up to go to a Tigers game. I mean, I wasn't around, but I mean, I've seen pictures, right? In the 30s or whatever, you get a tie on to go watch a ball game. And so we were talking about how she grew up, and it's like, oh yeah, we go on the hayride, the church hayride, and like the pastor's wife, she had a skirt on, and she was getting up, she was like, they've dressed up. And we talked about it for a while, and she goes, I think there was something there. I think there was something there. I'm not saying you got to wear a tie next Sunday. But I took note. Before I just dismissed the conversation, I took note. She goes, there was something about the way people looked at their life with more respect. And I thought about it for a long time. And I'm not saying you got to change the way you dress, but what I say is that there's this correlation. It just keeps going. First we kind of take God out of here, then we take this out, and then we take that out. And next thing you know, we got a bunch of just sad and depressed people. You know what they do? They send these kids to like boot camp. First thing they do, authority. First thing they're going to learn, authority. Authority. And you ain't it. And your opinion don't count for nothing. I don't think but I think we need to get back to this. We tried to rebel from it, thinking it's healthier, but I think this actually is healthy. I think this is the healthiest God right there, with the thunder, with the shaking. When I was a little kid, man, I had fear of God in a good way, but I did. I didn't have, my mom wasn't yelling at me, it wasn't my dad, it was here. I think that does something for us. And so my aunt said to me, it's like the casual went too far. I'm like, yes, it did. It did. I think she's right. I think we need that moment at the mountain again. Put God back at the first place. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to give us a moment to just do that in our own hearts. In our own hearts. Make sure we put him there. No one else competes. No one else compares. God at the top.